She is a photographer. In the year 2020, she hired her friend's brother, who looked like Jesus, to pose with her kids at the Salt Flats, as you do, to do some photo shoots dressed like Jesus. So there's pictures of this in the article. Like her kids are kind of wearing
Jesus-y clothes.
He's like Jesus sitting on a rock, and the kids are kind of around him. It's like artsy farts, like what you'd see in Deseret Book, maybe, but with her own children. So she said she did this because she wanted to hang it in her home, like to have a personal reminder to her kids of their relationship with the Savior. Well, apparently she posts this on Facebook and people go wild for it. And now she has like just massive amounts of people wanting Jesus photo, like her as the photographer to take Jesus photos. So she hires Jesuses on the regular and takes these photos for people.
As the cold winds of winter sweep in, there's nothing like the warmth of a comforting cup to help you slow down and unwind. This is the season. Let Postum be your cozy companion. Made from roasted grains, Postum is caffeine-free and rich with a smooth roasted flavor. It's the perfect drink for those quiet, chilly mornings. Whether you're curled up with a good book, sharing a laugh with loved ones, or simply watching the snow fall outside, a cup of Postum is the moment you have been waiting for.
Hello, welcome to This Week in Mormons, the Twin Sisters edition with sisters and hosts Ariane Smith
and Tiffany Hales.
Here for December.
Yes.
Sneaking one in before Christmas.
I know. So we are recording on Saturday, the 21st day of December, the shortest day of the year.
I know.
I do have to say, my favorite day of the year is summer solstice, when it's the longest day of the year, because I'm a summer girl and I absolutely love the long, warm summer nights.
I agree. These short, cold days are
cold days are tough. But I have to say, my second favorite day of the year is the winter solstice, which I know it's the shortest day of the year, and that seems ridiculous. But here's the reason I like it. Every day after today gets longer.
That's true.
And when I say longer, I mean longer with daylight.
Right.
So that is why I love the winter solstice.
We're on the up and up.
We are proceeding towards light, where previous to today the light was being was withdrawn, and now the light is going forward just a little bit at a time.
That's true. Okay. Well, I have the funniest thing just to share. I have to share this on the podcast because I found it highly amusing.
That is what this podcast is for. You all think it's entertainment for you. No, it's therapy for Ariana.
We have to catch up and share the weird things we observe.
Exactly. We're church-related things.
Okay, so 'tis the season of concerts, recitals, etc.
Yes.
So I went to a choir concert this week for my daughter in high school. She's a freshman.
Okay.
The freshman girls choir, one of the songs they were singing was Santa Baby.
Agreed.
Don't get me started. I don't know why we're still doing this in 2024, but whatever. Apparently they voted, and that's what they voted on. My daughter's like, I didn't vote for that one, Mom. I'm like, good.
You raised her right.
so anyway,
proud of you.
They're singing Santa Baby. Part of the gig while they're singing this song is they had someone come out dressed like Santa, and he was sitting in a rocking chair reading.
Okay.
And these girls in the choir singing Santa Baby, 2 or 3 would come down at a time and try to get Santa's attention, and Santa was not paying attention. That was like part of the gig of this act.
Part of the story that they're doing.
So long story short, but basically we had 2 seating arrangements for our family. We had 2 VIP seats up close that my husband and my son took, and the rest of us were farther in the back. Just the way it worked out.
We won't go there.
We don't need to hear the
details are not important.
So my husband is sitting closer, and he is taking video and pictures, and I can't see anything. I'm way far back. I see Santa. That's all I see. So when we get home from the choir concert, my husband is looking at the pictures, and he zooms in. I don't know why he even thinks to do this. He's like, I wonder what Santa was reading in that rocking chair. He zooms in on his picture of Santa. Do you know what Santa was reading in the rocking chair?
Well, I'm guessing it probably wasn't Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer.
It was the Liahona magazine.
Shut up.
We were dying laughing. We're like dying. We're sending this picture to like our friends who have kids in the choir. We're like, did you know what Santa was reading?
So they're singing this kind of sexually suggestive song while Santa is reading
Yes.
the Leona.
And Santa is also a young freshman boy dressed up like Santa. This is not an old man dressed up like Santa. He's also
he's at least age appropriate
he's
for the
also
girls.
a high school kid. So we were dying laughing. I'm like, was he trying to protect his spirit in this scandalous role of Santa? Or did he just grab the closest thing he found on the way out of the house? I'm pretty sure he grabbed the closest thing he found on the way out of the house because my daughters like asked him about it the next day. They were like, "You were reading that layout?" Like kind of teasing him, and he's like, "I don't know." Like this was not pre-planned. This was just a teenage boy being a teenage boy.
Oh
Anyway,
my gosh,
but freaking hilarious.
that is
right?
hilarious.
I'm like, oh my gosh.
Oh, that is
So clearly the Santa on stage was LDS. So we didn't know this kid, but we were asking our daughters. They were like, "Oh yeah, he's very Mormon, Mom." Like
clearly the first thing he grabs going out of the house is the Leona.
Anyway, I just thought it was hilarious.
Oh, that is so funny. That is so funny. Okay. Well, do you see how I'm dressed today?
Today is your big day.
Today is the big day. For those of you who are not watching on YouTube and who are listening, I have my Light the World sweatshirt on. I also have my little Light the World beanie. I'm not wearing that right now because I'm not ready to mess my hair up.
Mm-hmm.
Tonight, when we go, I will put it on to stay warm and mess my hair up. But yes, today is the day that I get to go down to the village. I get to do my 2-hour shift volunteering at the giving machine.
So you're there from 7 to 9.
I'm there from 7 to 9.
That'll be fun because you'll get all of the evening shoppers, and there's a lot of like restaurants down there.
That's what I think is. Yeah. I think that this is probably like in terms of shifts to pull from, the Saturday before Christmas between 7 and 9 in the evening, there's going to be a lot of traffic there, foot traffic there. So I think it should be fantastic. My husband's going with me. He's not like an official volunteer, but it's date night, and where I go, he goes. So
it's fine. I've been twice now, and let me tell you, there are a plethora of volunteers. There's more volunteers than people. He'll blend in just fine.
Exactly. So anyway, so I'm totally excited. I pulled up an email right before we hopped on to record. Apparently, I will have swag that I get to hand out tonight. They have some wristbands and some glow sticks and some things like that. I didn't know they were doing swag associated with this. No, you did, because you said when you went down there, your kids got some swag.
Yes, my kids got some glow sticks. So we went twice. We went once with my daughter's dance team who performed at the one in Caldwell. Yes. And so it was really interesting to see how they're running it. And it was I was like, oh, this is a way big deal, because I've only been once before, and it was in Tucson a couple years ago. I was sitting in the mall, and there was literally like one volunteer there to just answer questions. This is like full blown production. I can't figure out if it's just us being extra in Idaho or if they have upped the production quality everywhere on these things. I'm not quite sure about that.
I guess we'll find out if they bring them next year, if the level of excitement is the same.
Because I asked my sister-in-law, because she's in Tucson, and they have them in Tucson again this year. And I asked her if they were doing as much round the clock, because basically what's happening at ours is every single day there's entertainment throughout the day, which is why my daughter's dance team was dancing. They just are booking entertainment all day, every day, as much as they can get. And so I asked my sister-in-law in Tucson if they were doing that. And she wasn't sure. She said she knew they were for like the kickoff, but she wasn't sure if that was continuing on every single day. But also it may depend on the location. Theirs is like or one of the years it was in an indoor mall. So it's a little bit harder to have entertainment in an indoor than an outdoor.
Yeah. Our venues have all been outdoor, so you don't have to worry about the noise.
Yeah. So anyways, the first one we went to with my daughter and her dance team danced. They had like a scavenger hunt there around the plaza where it was. So they had little cards printed and you would go around and find the different numbers, and they would have clues. And these numbers are taped or like hung up in trees and on different things. And then when you completed the scavenger hunt, they all got a little bracelet.
Okay. I think that is so cool. I really love that idea, just to make it more interactive, because if you just go and you purchase something out of the vending machine, that goes pretty quickly. But if you want to
Mhm.
make this an interactive activity, that
Yeah.
is a great way to make it an interactive activity.
So they were really funny about the social media aspect of it because, we had the dance team. So
Okay.
after they performed, we're taking pictures and they said, oh, come take them on our backdrop because, they
Okay.
have these backdrops
For photos.
for photos. And so this gal came up to the girls on the team. I'm sure she's just like, oh, a bunch of teenagers.
They love social media.
And she handed them all a card and was like, oh, please post and use this hashtag. And the hashtag was written on the
Yeah.
card. And she was saying something like, we've gotten 100 and something posts, hashtags today. We want to get to this number of hashtags today. And she's handing this to all these girls. They're not going to post. Newsflash, teenagers do not post these days. They are very, very selective.
Particular
in
about what they post.
And, a lot of these girls aren't LDS. So I'm sure
Yeah.
they're like, I don't even know what this thing is.
Yeah. Yeah.
So anyways, but she was attempting to get posts from it. And their social media campaign is strong. I will say there have been a lot of posts.
There have been a lot of posts. In fact, in the same email that I just pulled up that talked about the swag they were handing out tonight, they talked about the same thing. Encourage people to post it to Giving Machines Idaho, any of their pictures.
Yeah.
I posted today just on my own personal Facebook and Instagram. I didn't hashtag anybody. Just a picture of me in my Light the World sweatshirt, just encouraging all my friends tonight to say, hey, come out to the village between 7 and 9, say hi to me. So I'm hoping that I get to see a few familiar faces tonight because I would like to take a lot of pictures with some of my friends that come. And if they are okay with it, I will then put it on my own social media and probably on the TWIM social media if they're okay with it. But I'm hoping to take a bunch of pictures tonight and hopefully post it on the TWIM social media because I am super excited about it.
So, and then this is really interesting. I just have to tell people about the second time. The second time we went, I took the kids like as a family to actually go and
when they had moved them from Caldwell to Meridian.
Moved them to Meridian. So this was like our closest location to where we live in Boise. So I took the kids, and the reason we went on the day we went is one of my kids' friends, who is a middle schooler, is a very good artist. And what they had done was they had picked him and they had picked one other local artist.
Okay.
And he had drawn like a beautiful nativity picture a couple of years ago. And then the other local artist was an older gentleman, and he had drawn a picture of the Savior. And what they did was the church printed out just piles of prints.
So how many prints do you think they printed out?
8x10s. Oh, they had hundreds.
They were 8x10. That's decent size.
They were 8x10, like nice quality print. And on the back, it had a description of the artist and a photo of the artist. And then they had the two artists come and sit there for about 4 hours and sign prints. And this was on Sunday. So we went after church on Sunday. And we went to see him because we love him and we love his print. I was like, I really do want that print. He's a great artist. He's only in like 8th grade. He's so good.
Well, didn't you say he did this one like a year or two ago?
Yeah, he did this one a couple years ago.
His newest one.
He does one every year, a picture of the nativity. So they were kind of promoting it on social media. Come between 10 and 2, and every person that like donates gets a signed print by the artist or whatever. So we went and my kids picked their things, and then we got the print. But I thought, how clever! So I was talking to his mom, and
that's really
I said,
great idea.
How did this happen? And she said that somebody in their old ward knew that he was an artist, and she had been given the assignment. I'm sure by her stake, that was their stakes day, and she had been given the assignment. You are in charge of getting as many people as possible here on this day. That is your job. So I'm like, well, that was very creative of her.
Yes.
Like other than just the singing.
Exactly.
Which I do think that gets a lot of people there, because you have singing groups come and then all of their parents come to watch them. But I'm like, oh, that's very creative and thinking outside of the box.
Well, exactly. So, and then you get to go away, walk away from the experience with this wonderful 8x10 nice print that you can then go frame and do whatever you want in your house.
Yeah, so, I framed mine.
I think that's really cool.
I'm putting it up every Christmas as part of my decoration.
I love that. I think that's just ingenious. It's been really interesting. Again, we don't have other cities to compare it to. We only have, what they're doing here in Western Idaho. But I think that they've done just some really creative things in marketing the Light the World machines and things going on when you go down there to the Light the World machines. So I'm giving Idaho mad props for stepping up and making the Light the World machines, the giving machines, a very cool thing.
It's been really fun. It's one of my favorite things that
Yeah.
our church does.
I love it.
I think it's so cool.
I
And
love
what I
it.
really, really want to hear, and I'm sure we'll hear, I can't
Mhm.
imagine they would not publish it, but I really want to know when it's all done, like how
How much
much each local charity raised.
Exactly.
Like, I would just love to hear the numbers when it's all done.
Exactly.
So.
Exactly. Well, and one of the things that they encouraged us as volunteers to do tonight is to become familiar with the charities and to be able to talk about them and tell people what you like about them. So the charity that I am going to talk about is called the Women's and Children's Alliance.
That was the one I picked.
That was the one I picked to
most
donate
of
to
my
too.
kids. I love it. Is such a good organization. We've done stuff for them before, and they're so great.
Yeah. So they help women who are coming out of domestic violence situations and giving them shelter and helping them get back on their feet. Because that's just a really, as a former prosecutor, because I prosecuted a lot of domestic violence cases, and really understand the cycle of domestic violence and, you know, some of the psychological struggles that these women have. And just to have that organization there that provides that service that is much needed, I'm like, yep, that's where I want my dollars going.
Yeah, definitely.
So, okay. Not that the other ones aren't great.
Yeah,
the
they're
other
all
ones,
good.
The other ones are fantastic. I just picked my top, and that one is my top.
Yeah, that one was the one that's kind of close to my heart too. So
okay. All right. Well, before we do some stories, we need to drink our postum. So let's cheers our postum.
New flavor.
A new flavor. Let me tell you what I created tonight. I will tell you the pluses and the minuses of it. I tried to do a peppermint drink. So I took the cocoa postum and mixed that up, and I added in, of course, a packet of stevia, a little bit of vanilla creamer, and then I added in, this is where I went wrong. And I went wrong before once already on this. We were trying to do peppermint, and I should have only added one drop. I got a little crazy on the peppermint. I didn't realize it was as potent as it was. And so the peppermint flavor in this drink is very strong. And then I did a dollop of marshmallow cream. I think it would be better if I only had one little dash of peppermint, and then I think I would get this correct. But
yeah,
people,
it's good.
I just make this up on the fly before we record.
The peppermint is strong.
It is good,
but it is a good combo. So I would recommend just be careful on the peppermint.
Yes, be careful on the peppermint. So anyway, Postum, again, thank you for being our 2024 sponsor. I think they're going to be our sponsor in 2025 too. So there will be more Postum recipes courtesy of Tiffany.
We're going to have to get creative.
Oh,
gonna run out of ideas.
I got them. We're good. Okay, let's start with some stories since that's what we're here for. Now, staying on our theme, we have 3 Christmas related stories because, of course, we are just days before Christmas. And the first one, of course, is a giving machine story because I can't shut up about the giving machines. Freely admit it. Anyway, this is a story about the original giving machines. So, in 2017, the church experimented with this giving machine idea, and they threw them in the Joseph Smith Memorial Building in Salt Lake City. At that time, there were lots of people coming to Temple Square to see the lights on Temple Square. Of course, the Joseph Smith Memorial Building is beautifully decorated, so they thought, why don't we throw up some vending machines in there and we'll see where this goes. And so there was one of the 70s. His name is Elder Brent H. Nielsen. This was kind of one of his assignments. And at the time that they put these vending machines up, they thought, well, we don't know what'll happen, but if it takes off, maybe we can do it in other places and light the world. Well, I obviously don't have to tell you what happened. The whole thing completely took off. There were lines. People were totally excited about it. And it spawned what we have now. Well, a couple of things from this article. First of all, there were a whole bunch of church service missionaries who were down there working these shifts at the giving machines on Temple Square. And so they reunited some of those church service missionaries because let me tell you, those original vending machines, again, these were just kind of a rough prototype. I mean, at the time, you could even buy socks and socks would drop as opposed to just like a card.
Right.
These original vending machines and the display and how they all have it set up is on display at the Church History Museum.
It's so funny that 2017, how many years ago?
7 years ago.
7 years ago. It doesn't seem like that far out to be like putting something in a history museum that's only 7 years old. But also I get it because we are very historically
Exactly.
minded in our church, and they're like, well, that's where it's going to go eventually, let's just put it in. Like,
Well, and the machine itself and the whole concept has evolved so much
Yeah.
in the last 7 years.
and it is going to be, I mean, like I said, it's still fairly new, but like in the long run, it is going to be a pretty historical
I think
thing
I
for
think
our
it will be
church.
too.
Yeah.
They've done so much good and so much
Mhm.
partnering and donated so much humanitarian aid. I just want to hit one really cool highlight from this story. So, of course, the machines turned out to be wildly successful. There were people waiting in line, but they said, of course, people didn't mind waiting in line. And even in one occasion, somebody broke out in a Christmas carol, and people joined in, and people were there in the spirit of giving, and they wanted to have this experience. And so nobody was bothered about waiting in line. And of course, nobody does a line better than the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. They have line management and crowd management down to a science.
And Disney.
And Disney.
Is
That's
that,
true.
Is that why we're so attracted to Disney?
Maybe that's why we're so
It
attracted
feels
to Disney.
familiar.
You can deal with lines and crowds. Anyway, so this is the story that I like. One particular gentleman approached one of the service missionaries, and he asked why the giving machines were not available online for convenience. And it was at that moment that this little boy began jumping up and down with excitement after making a purchase. And the missionary turned to that man and said, "Look over there at that little boy. You can't duplicate that."
Mhm.
And so I loved that because you could go online and push some buttons, but you don't get the experience of going
Right.
to a location, being around other people, having that Christmas feel.
Right. Well, and especially with the kids, because
Especially with the kids.
like my husband and I donate every year, just
Yeah.
like you said, online,
Yeah.
privately on our own to whatever,
Yeah.
whatever things. But we always try to make sure there's something for our kids, like
Exactly.
for that very reason. Like that's so hard for kids to grasp the concept of like,
Yeah.
but actually going and like taking a toy off of a giving tree or giving something
Yeah.
to Salvation Army or going to a giving machine,
Yeah.
like that's like so important for kids. Like
Exactly.
that's how they're going to learn and see and understand the concept.
Exactly. And get to
So-
have that tactile
Mhm.
experience. So it does not say, unfortunately, how long the giving machines are going to be on display. I doubt that I will be able to get down to Utah because let me tell you, if I could get down to Utah while the original
Mhm.
giving machines were on display, I just love them so much. I'd go to the Church History Museum and take my picture in front of the original giving machines.
So you don't think it'll be permanent?
I think it's probably a Christmas thing that they
Oh.
brought them out at Christmas. I don't think it's a permanent
I
display.
was wondering if it would just be permanent. Like this is part of us now.
As much as I would like it to be permanent, I'm guessing
Uh-huh.
it's a limited Christmas time display
Interesting.
thing. That's just my guess.
Interesting. Okay.
All right.
Next Christmas story is about Christmas in Kirtland. Apparently, Kirtland.
Did you know they did Christmas in Kirtland?
I had no idea.
I had no idea.
Apparently, for the past 19 years, this will be the 20th anniversary. There is an event called Christmas in Kirtland. It is organized by members of the Kirtland, Ohio Stake, but also with help
Yes.
from and supported by like the historical sites there. They have been doing Christmas in Kirtland, and it's like a nativity festival, like a creche festival where they have nativities from all around the world, which I know is an event we do a lot in our church. At various wards and stakes will do it, but they have been doing it for 20 years. I thought this was very interesting. They have always housed it at the Kirtland Historic Visitor Center. This year, with growing crowds and demand, they are having 2 locations, and the second location will be at the Kirtland Temple Visitor Center, which obviously is now owned by the church. So they will have 2 locations. I thought it was very interesting that for the past 19 years, it has been at the Kirtland Visitor Center rather than at a church building.
Well,
right?
I am guessing it doesn't say Historic Kirtland Visitor Center.
Uh-huh.
What I'm wondering is I'm thinking that is
Oh,
the visitor
church
center
probably
that
owns
the
it.
church owned because
Okay.
the church was sponsoring this.
That would make sense.
And now they own the Kirtland Temple Visitor Center, which was previously owned by the Church of Christ.
Oh, that would
And
make
so
sense. I just thought
that was my guess.
I just thought Kirtland Visitor Center, that's owned by the city, but you're right, it probably is owned by the church.
I'm pretty sure it's
because I was shocked that the church would do it not at a church-owned building.
Yeah, I would guess that the church, obviously Community of Christ had their own visitor center, and my recollection is that the church had its own visitor center.
Okay. So anyways, they just have like nativities representing
Yes.
like more than 70 countries. It's like a big deal.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it's a great missionary opportunity out there for.
Okay, well, next time I do my Twin Taffy in January, I'm having Laura Wolford on, and she is our friend who lives in Ohio.
Oh, right.
So
I'm sure she goes.
I am going to ask her about Christmas in Kirtland and if she has done Christmas in Kirtland, and we're going to get a little report from Laura on that.
Yeah, I'm sure she's probably been. So.
All right. So our next Christmas story and our last Christmas story before we move on to some other stuff is. I'm sure you've heard of Elder D. Todd Christofferson.
Mm-hmm.
He is a member of the Quorum of the 12. He has a wife named Kathy. Well, Kathy has a talent that we did not know about.
I know. This was fun.
That got highlighted in the church news this week. Kathy's talent? She likes to build gingerbread houses. Now, this is very close to my heart because I love myself a good gingerbread house. And as you know, because you were in high school at the time when I did this, the Good Housekeeping magazine used to have a national annual gingerbread contest. And in 1998, I decided I'm winning that thing. And I built myself a log cabin gingerbread house and submitted the pictures, and I won.
She won.
I won the Good Housekeeping.
She was published.
I was published Good Housekeeping National Gingerbread Contest. So I understand what goes into the construction of a gingerbread house, and I can appreciate that. Apparently, Kathy Christofferson loves gingerbread houses, and for years, when their family was young and they had their kids growing up, it was an annual tradition that they would put together gingerbread houses. And then as the kids got older, she does this in conjunction with her husband. From the article, it sounds like, she designs and D. Todd is the little worker bee.
She gives him jobs.
Anyway, so then they created like replicas of their children's houses. Well, the last few years, what they have done is she has created a gingerbread house, and these are large gingerbread houses. She has donated it to the Festival of the Trees down in Salt Lake City. And all of the money that's raised from the Festival of the Trees through the auctioning of these items goes to Primary Children's Medical Center.
It was really cool.
So
you have to get on, and everybody needs to get on and look at the
look at the picture
of her house.
Because
this is not your average gingerbread.
No.
This is advanced level gingerbreading.
It definitely advanced level gingerbreading. So anyway, they just talk in the article. She talks about, it's just a way to give back and just what Primary Children's Hospital means to them, and that Christmas and Christmas traditions are about giving back. And so that's a way for them to share their talents and give back. And I am giving mad props to Sister Christofferson because I want to know where she finds the time to do it, because we know that these general authorities are traveling practically every single weekend. And usually they are traveling with their spouses. For a long time, they didn't, but I never see any of them these days that aren't traveling with their spouses. And having made a gingerbread house, this is not something you sit down on a Saturday and decide I'm going to put together a gingerbread house. There's a lot of planning that goes into this. So she obviously manages her time very well.
Well, and it's just so fun to see their outside hobbies and interests that we don't really get to see very often. It's like, oh my gosh.
Exactly. So I really liked that story.
That was fun.
I was a little verklempt. All right. Shall we move on? This next section. So we finished our Christmas section. We are going to go to Mormons in the media, which I swear we've had this section every single time that we have podcasted for the last few months. I don't really have any Mormons behaving badly because all the Mormons are now in the media. And so then we have to talk about all of these media type stories involving members of the church.
There are so many. Every month when we podcast, there's a new slew of them. They're the story that won't die.
They are the story that won't die.
The Tradwives are taking over the story.
Exactly. Speaking of the story, an idea that won't die, of course, I'm leading off Mormons in the media with another Tradwife story. Like, seriously, we can't quit you, Tradwives. Although this is a story about Tradwives that quit. So
these are reformed Tradwives.
So this is a story that came out that said Tradwife life isn't as good as it looks on TikTok. Just ask former Tradwives. So, what I thought was really different about this is, when we see the Tradwife on TikTok or Instagram, I mean, they are portraying this lifestyle, and 9 times out of 10, it is completely unrealistic what they are portraying, and it is just a fantasy. the women that they interviewed in this particular article are women who were formerly active members of the church, were traditional wives in the sense of what kind of members of the church kind of expect or think traditional wives are going to be. And then they subsequently had a faith crisis and left. And so now they are considering themselves non-traditional wives.
Mhm.
So kind of not somebody who has portrayed themselves. They're not people who have portrayed themselves on Instagram and then are, like revealing the man
Yes.
behind the curtain.
They're not influencers.
No.
They're like actual trad wives.
They're actual trad wives who said, this isn't all that it's cracked up to be. I kind of like, some of the role reversals and things that have changed since then. I think this was from NPR, if I recall correctly. This was a story
this was
that
an NPR one
that,
that came out this
NPR
week.
had done. But there was one of them who said, the first time she ever saw Ballerina Farm, she didn't realize she was Mormon. She didn't realize she was rich. She just came up in this lady's algorithm, and she had a visceral response, which was furious. Apparently, it hit too close to home to her former life. So anyway, it just kind of an interesting story, and
it was kind of like the dark side of being a trad
the
wife.
dark side of being a trad wife. There was one quote in here that said, several experts say trad wives and their renewed focus on family values are the direct aftermath of decades of lean-in feminism, which eventually led to do it all mentality. I don't know about that. I mean, this article kind of paints the picture of you are either one or the other. You are either this trad wife or you're like a Wookiee, a girl boss woman.
Right.
That you can't have a happy mix of both. And I don't like that because I think that you can have a happy mix of both.
Yeah. And
I think you can lean into both.
I think it's not black and white. There's a whole lot of in between.
No.
And I also didn't like this. I hate it that we're pretending. Like, I felt like the people they interviewed in this article that were really knocking on like trad wives and the lifestyle is not all it's added.
Yeah.
Like, I get really frustrated that we're pretending that these influencers, these trad wives, are the same as just a regular stay-at-home mom.
Yeah.
They're not. They're running a business. They're not. They are running an empire. Most of them have assistants. They have employees. They have like an actual business. So like to say they're the same thing is not like
exactly.
They're running a business. It's just out of their home versus
out of their home and on social media.
Yeah, versus not. So then to have somebody that's like, it's not as glamorous. Let's stop pretending that that's what it's like. We all know this is fake. It's social media.
Exactly.
It's like trying to claim that a reality television show is actual reality.
Yeah. Well, and the first woman that they interviewed, I mean, she kind of had an interesting story. She said she grew up in the Mormon church. She got married while she was a student at Brigham Young University, Idaho. She said her husband discouraged her from finishing her degree. Instead, they started a business together. When church leaders found out, she said they asked her to step down from the business and to focus on her family. And so she agreed, and she raised her 5 children. That's not the experience I've had. I know that's the experience that maybe some women have had. But to me, that seems more individual towards the man that she chose to marry and the church leadership lottery. And granted, you cannot control the church leadership lottery. Young single women out there, pick wisely. That is my advice.
Right.
To young single women is pick wisely. So that's a choice you can control.
Yes. And so I guess, I mean, in that situation, I can see how it could be triggering for her to see these people on social media pretending everything's great and their lives are perfect. But also, like, you have to remember as a grown adult, like, this isn't reality.
Exactly.
And let's not pretend it is.
Exactly.
And so maybe if you can remember that, you won't be as triggered. I don't know. So
I don't know. But yes, we have a new trad wife story, and I have a feeling I don't see this trend going away heading into 2025. Which brings us to our next fun
interesting
Mormons in the Media story.
So
I love this one.
This one is hilarious to me. This was by The Kit. It's like an online website by Sarah Lang, who writes for the Kit. And this was not the first article we saw on this. There was another
No.
one from back in October
Which we may or may
from
not
the
have
Wall
talked
Street
about.
Journal, which we couldn't remember if
We
we had
couldn't remember if we talked about it.
But this one is about Utah hair. Utah curls are more than a TikTok trend. They're a portal into Mormon values. So this whole article was about Utah hair. So I think that pre all of these housewives and reality shows, maybe we were aware of Utah hair, but it wasn't labeled Utah hair. Post these reality shows, I think anyone who has like kept up on pop culture, you can say Utah hair and they know exactly what hairstyle you're talking about. So we are talking about long extensions with smooth curls.
I have to say something real quick here. When I first watched the trailer for Secret Lives of Mormon Wives, they all have exactly the same hairstyle. And my first thought was, how am I going to keep them separate? Because they all look the same.
The same. I know. And they're even like, I categorized them into the blondes and the brunettes. And the brunettes were even harder to tell apart because they really looked alike. So the Utah curl, this article says that it has descended from the mainstream beach waves. We all know beach waves have been popular for many years now. I think Kardashians kind of started some of that, and lots of other celebrities. Like it was like celebrity Hollywood hair, Taylor Swift, flowy beach waves. This is like a descendant from the beach waves, but it has a unique Utah style to it because it is
a
longer.
Second cousin once removed.
Yes. The Utah way of doing this is longer. The extensions are longer.
Yes.
And the curls are kind of smoother, more kept, not as like disheveled as like the former.
More perfect cropped hair.
The former beach waves.
As opposed to the messy beach hair.
Yes. So this whole article was so funny. It was just talking about like what a cultural phenomenon this is. And because of these reality shows, this trend is starting to spread like across the US. Like hairdressers are now getting requests for like the Utah curls, the Utah hair. Like in California, in other parts of the country, hairdressers are getting requests. So they interviewed this gal. Her name is Alyssa Grenfell. I think she's not a member of the church anymore, but she did go to BYU. And when she came to BYU, she came from out of state somewhere. And she had like long hair that she flat ironed. And she said, sure enough, she was from Kentucky. By the time she left BYU, she had the long curls. Like it just like, she's like, for whatever reason, I ended up with that hairdo. And like, it was kind of like subconscious.
Yes.
And then the article just talked about how
we all want to conform.
Yes. About how there's this kind of like culture of conformity and like everybody likes to be the same and like the copycat culture and how when you live in a community where everybody's trying to achieve the same goals, it's easy to kind of fall into the like looking the same. But you know what made me laugh the most about this article is, do you remember in the early 2000s, you were still living in Utah?
Okay.
I had just moved away from Utah because I graduated from BYU. And we would joke all the time about the Utah hair. The Utah hair in the early 2000s was like an A-line bob.
Yes.
And that was Utah hair.
Everybody wore an A-line bob that looked like a football helmet. Yes. It was teased everywhere. Blonde, teased
Blonde,
everywhere.
highlighted, A-line bob. And we would joke about how that was Utah hair. And you could 100% tell if someone was Mormon if they had that haircut. Like if
you go to Disneyland and you could pick the Mormons out of the crowd.
You would be like Mormon, 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 because you could see the hair.
Exactly.
So it is so hilarious to me that we're like about 24 years later, 20 to 25 years later.
We're still talking Utah hair.
And the Utah hair has dramatically changed, but now we have a new style of Utah hair. This is so interesting to me. Anyway, it's just fascinating, like the culture.
It really is, and we can't move on from this article without talking about the best line from this season of Real Housewives of Salt Lake City.
What was that?
Okay, they are at the bat mitzvah for Meredith.
Okay.
Angie is there. She's having a conversation with Brittany. They're getting into it. And she tells Brittany that Brittany has high body count hair.
Yes, I remember this.
Now, Brittany's hair in this episode was not the typical Utah style. She does have the long hair. I've seen her wear it in the typical Utah style.
But they were messy.
She had kind of a
Didn't she have kind of messy
she
curls?
had kind of a 2010-ish Utah style.
Uh-huh.
Well, they weren't really messy curls. They were just because they weren't beach wavy. It was
Uh-huh.
just really curly and kind of big. And Angie has hair salons. That's what she's known for. And so she's always critiquing everybody's hair. And she told Brittany she had high body count hair. Now, do we dare tell the listeners what that means to have high body count
She's
hair?
slut shaming her hair.
She was slut shaming her hair. So
She did not conform to the Utah hair
she
enough
did
for
not.
Angie's liking.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh.
That has been my favorite line.
It's so funny.
I actually used it at work this week.
You did? Did you tell someone they had high body count hair?
No.
Someone's gonna call HR on you.
We were talking about a common individual that we know. And I was talking with someone who watches Salt Lake City.
Uh-huh.
And I said, she has high body count hair. And my friend about rolled on the floor laughing
gosh.
because she knew exactly what I was talking about.
That is so funny.
So,
That's
and then of
hilarious.
course, after Angie tells her she has high body count hair, Lisa turns to Brittany and says, there's a kerosene or something sort of a treatment for you. You need that.
Oh my goodness. Anyway, it is fascinating.
It's fascinating.
Though. And it's fascinating to see it spread outside of Utah.
It is.
Because I don't think the A-line Bob of the
No,
early
really
2000s
never spread.
really ended up being like a nationwide cultural phenomenon
Yes.
thing. But because of these shows that are wildly popular, that people all over the country are watching, this is spreading.
Yes.
It's fascinating.
It is fascinating. It is so fascinating.
I personally, I don't think I could ever handle extensions.
I don't think I can handle
like
extensions.
It would be so
either.
heavy.
Well,
Wouldn't
and it
give
also
you a
seems
headache?
like I like to brush my hair and stuff. How do you brush your hair without like ripping out your extensions? I just don't see how this happens.
I don't know.
I don't get it.
But I feel like it would give me a headache.
In addition to that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, our next Mormons in the Media story.
Okay.
There is a new show on Bravo, and it is called Sold on Salt Lake. So Bravo, of course, does the Real Housewives stuff. They also are known for a lot of real estate shows where they, real estate is the pornography. They show you these high-end, beautiful homes, and they have these agents selling these multi-million-dollar homes. So they thought, well, what could be better than the beautiful backdrop of Salt Lake City thrown in with lots of pictures of temples and a slew of real estate agents that are in varying degrees of relationships to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And that's the best way to describe it.
And are willing to talk about it on camera.
Exactly.
And judge each other. For their churchiness on camera.
So the real estate agent, the real estate firm that they have focused on is called Presidio. It is owned by a woman named Jennifer Yo. It is not the 10 Commandments. They call it the Jen Commandments. Mm-hmm. And so she is kind of the grand marshal for all of the real estate agents that work underneath her. And she was formerly an active member of the church, is no longer an active member of the church, but I think still kind of somewhat culturally considers herself to be Mormon. Mm-hmm. And then we have 2 male real estate agents who are very active Mormon. And then we have another real estate agent who just recently left the church and is no longer a Mormon. Anyway, so in the undertones of selling all of these houses, we have all sorts of Mormonism stuff being thrown around about, how Mormon are you? And what are you saying? And is your saying impacting my sales because you're calling me not so Mormon? And it's kind of crazy.
It's really interesting. I watching the previews, I was like, okay, because they showed quite a bit of that in the previews. Yes. And I have not ever watched any of their other real estate shows on Bravo, which is surprising because I do like a Bravo show.
I have. I love the real estate shows.
But I haven't watched much of the other ones. I always assumed they were heavy on the real estate with a side of drama.
Yeah, no.
But
it's a side of real estate, heavy on the drama.
When I watched this, I was like, oh, there's not a lot of real estate in this.
No. Real estate is just the hook to get you into the show to follow the drama.
But the church emphasis is just, my mind is just still like completely blown by people's fascination with this. And so I just have the hardest time wrapping my mind around it. I know. And I'm sure the producers are asking questions along these lines to draw this out. But it's just really interesting, the heavy, heavy focus on the church.
Exactly.
And it's not nitty gritty doctrine of the
No.
church. It's just
It's cultural stuff.
cultural.
Cultural.
Like, what do you do? I'm a Mormon 2.0. Like,
Yeah.
what's your relationship with the church?
Exactly. And I think what we are seeing on a lot of these reality shows, and this will tie into the next article that we're going to do, is we see varying degrees of Mormonism, for lack of a better term. It seems to me like previously, up until, maybe the last few years, that you were defined as a member of the church if you, went to the temple, if you didn't drink, if you paid your tithing, if you wore modest clothing, that is kind of what delineated you from everything else. And if you didn't fit into that mold, you were anti, you were Jack, you were whatever. It was very black and white. I'm seeing a lot more grayification of that. I think that in that sense, we're kind of becoming like the Catholics, because you have those people that are very actively Catholic. They participate, they go to mass every week. And then you have a lot of people who are very culturally Catholic, and maybe they show up at church, once or twice a year. But they still consider themselves, they still associate with that. They still consider that to be their religious belief. And I think we are seeing that type of a shift in our own church, where, the things that used to define somebody that was considered Mormon are not necessarily what defines somebody anymore as being a member of the church.
Yeah, it's so interesting.
It's fascinating to me.
Which leads to our next article.
Yes.
This was in the Washington Post, and the title is 2024 was the year of Mormon women. And this whole article kind of goes through all of these shows that we've talked about this year. Why has they kind of like trying to figure out why has this become such a thing? They said at a time when conservative politics, personalities, and media are surging in popularity, women saints aren't just mirroring pop culture. They are perhaps for the first time at the forefront of it.
Which is crazy.
It is blowing my mind. So they talked about like all the different portrayals we've seen this year. Under the Banner of Heaven. They talked about the movie Heretic, and like we see this like true crime aspect of Mormon women. And then on the opposite end of that, we see like the way Mormon women are portraying themselves, like these influencers with the big curls and the Stanley cups and the sodas and the trendy houses, and like that kind of self-portrayal that a lot of Mormon women are putting out there on social media and in these reality type shows. And they just said, they talked about how Mormonism just pairs really well with social media right now and with capitalism, and how when you're raised in this culture and this faith, you're used to like kind of performing. And
I liked what they said. We're always performing our faith to one another. And in a sense, that makes us really well suited for social media. And I'm like, that is really true. We are true. Always portraying, oh, look how Mormon I am.
Right. Yeah, it's true. There's always an image to uphold. Yeah. So that does translate to social media very easily. Anyways, it was just a very interesting.
Or you could say, look how reformed Mormon I am. Article. If you want to be a reformed Mormon, or how Mormon 2.0 I am, like Lisa Barlow calls herself.
Yeah. And I mean, they didn't just focus on the big hitters. I mean, they talked about Ballerina Farm and some of the big hitters, but they also talked about, they interviewed this gal. Her name is Abby Powell. Abby Powell. She's 25 years old, stay-at-home mom in Southern California. They talked about how she is on TikTok. Like, she got on TikTok not to be an influencer, but to watch videos. And then after the Secret Lives came out, she posted her own video, kind of a counterpoint. Yes. Like, this is really what this, and I've seen a lot of these going around. I've seen a lot of these like, too. This is what the real Secret Lives of Mormon wives are. And they're just like going to church and like doing their everyday things, like boring things, right? So she had kind of posted one of those to try to show like a more accurate account about what it's like. And it like hit 3 million views, like
went viral.
So all of a sudden now she's a TikTok star. Like this random Mormon mom in Southern California.
Who's portraying what maybe is more typical.
Yeah. So they're just, this whole article was just about like this complete fascination with Mormon culture and Mormon women that is happening right now. And they talked about how, like the varying degrees, like a lot of these people are not like super loyal to the doctrine of the church, but more loyal to like the culture of it. And anyway, just the varying degrees of Mormonism, like we just talked about, varying degrees of how you live the lifestyle. I'm completely fascinated with this. This is not anything I ever could have predicted for 2024.
No.
I mean, we knew we had a lot of influencers on Instagram,
but certainly
and all the
a year ago, we couldn't have predicted where this was going to go.
With the reality shows and just like the through the roof fascination with Mormonism and Mormon women and the culture. More. I don't think people are super deep diving into the church, but I don't know. I think I've come to the conclusion, the age old, all news is good news, or all coverage.
All press is good press.
Is good
press.
All
press is good press.
I think that's where I've landed with this. I'm like, I don't see anything wrong with it. I mean, is it going to convert people to the church? Probably not. But you never know. People might explore it more. But either way, I think I am hopeful that it opens us within the church. And people outside of the church, opens us up to the idea of just being more loving and accepting of all ways to live the gospel, and realizing we are not all the same, and we may not always agree, but we can still like just
love each other. Exactly. I do not see this trend going away anytime soon. I think that we get at least 6 months into 2025 before things maybe start to calm down. But
because we have another season coming out.
We have another season
of the Secret Lives.
I mean, it may spawn more knockoffs. I mean, who knows?
I know.
I just think that it has legs, and that this trend of reality shows that have a hyper focus on members of the church, it's not dying anytime soon.
That's what I'm very curious to see where it goes over the next year, because now we have this new real estate pop up on Bravo. How many shoot offs are we going to see on different networks and different genres? Like maybe we're going to get a baking show with like a Utah edge to it. I don't know. I'm really curious.
I don't know.
I have zero predictions because who knows?
All right. So you have our next two stories, which we'll cover, and then we'll save everything else for Patreon. Okay. Because we're getting a little short on time.
We are.
We've had a good conversation this afternoon.
Those trad wives, they always suck up all the time.
They really do. I'm surprised our listeners even listen to us anymore when we get on and talk about the trad wives.
Not more trad wives. Okay. Okay, this one was really interesting. This is a Wall Street Journal.
This was mortifying.
Article.
You showed me a picture in this article that is mortifying. So go talk about the article, and then we'll talk about my mortification of the picture in this article.
I know. My brother-in-law sent this to me this week, and I'm sorry. I think Wall Street Journal might be behind a paywall, but my brother-in-law sent me this story, and I'm like, we just have to talk about this.
We cannot not talk about it.
So Wall Street Journal, the title was, "It Pays to Have Long Hair and a Beard and Live in Utah," because apparently Jesus models in Utah are in high demand.
Who knew?
Who knew?
Do they all have agents? Do they have agents
I
that
don't
rep
know.
them?
That is a very good question. So this
Are they with modeling agencies? Do you call it the modeling agency? I need a Jesus for the day. Send me a Jesus.
Okay. Here are a few highlights.
Okay.
This is not what I expected. I expected they're in demand because of The Chosen and videos and church media. No, they are in demand for private parties, private photo shoots. So
this is so bothersome.
They interviewed. There was a woman, her name is Michaela Alalos. She is a photographer. In the year 2020, she hired her friend's brother, who looked like Jesus, to pose with her kids at the Salt Flats, as you do, to do some photo shoots dressed like Jesus. So there's pictures of this in the article. Like her kids are kind of wearing
Jesus-y clothes.
He's like Jesus sitting on a rock, and the kids are kind of around him. It's like artsy fartsy, like what you'd see in Deseret Book maybe, but with her own children. So she said she did this because she wanted to hang it in her home, like to have a personal reminder to her kids of their relationship with the Savior. Well, apparently she posts this on Facebook and people go wild for it. And now she has like just massive amounts of people wanting Jesus photo, like her as the photographer to take Jesus photos. So she hires Jesuses on the regular and takes these photos for people.
This I have no words.
So
I'm speechless.
they interviewed another guy who has posed as Jesus for many, many photos. His name is Terry Holker. He said that about 10 years ago, so he was ahead of the trend.
Oh, okay.
About 10 years ago, he went out to the Salt Flats and asked a friend who did photos to take some pictures of him as Jesus for his mom for like a present. Well, I guess his mom went bananas for these photos, started making prints, giving them to friends, everybody. And so kind of word got out that he would like be Jesus. And he said he doesn't do it for money. He's never taken money for it. He does it for as a free service, and people can ask him to come and take these Jesus photos. And he said, I have no idea how many homes have a picture of me in Utah County. So, and then they interviewed a couple of these other Jesus models.
I'm finding this to be painful.
They interviewed a couple of other Jesus models who talked about the pressure it is to be a Jesus model, because it's a lot of responsibility and like expectations of you behaving and acting a certain way. It's not your normal modeling gig.
No.
Oh, one of the photographers said that she tries to tell parents when they want to book with her, if your kid freaks out when you take him to sit on Santa's lap, it might be difficult to do Jesus photos. Like your kid's got to be cool with this. Anyway, isn't that interesting? I mean, we just have to be loving and accepting. We were just talking about how we have to accept all kinds of church members.
Okay, that's a lot different than hiring your own personal Jesus model to take Jesus pictures with your kids.
We can love and accept them, but not respect their choices.
Exactly. So then, here's my question. I want to know, are any of these Jesus models active members? And does the church have a policy on being hired as a model to portray Jesus? Because I know the church is very particular in any of their church productions about whoever it is that is portraying the Savior. Whether, any sort of church production, there is a whole list of like standards that the church wants for anybody who is portraying the Savior, because the Savior is so sacred. And I guess maybe that's what kind of offends me about this is the Savior is so sacred, and is this kind
of a little bit sacrilegious?
Is this sacrilegious, and is this making a mockery,
crossing a line
of the sacredness of the Savior? I think that just kind of came to me. I think that's what is giving me heartburn.
That's
in
why
this
it's
situation.
giving you the ick.
That's what's giving me the ick. Is I'm like, ugh,
it's strange.
Yeah,
it's weird.
Okay. Let's get to your last weird story. We're going to end on a weird note before we go into Mormons behaving badly in our favorite things.
Got a lot of strange stuff.
This story has an ick factor to it.
This also is a little ick. And unfortunately, this is straight from the church website. So don't hate me, everybody.
Okay.
I personally find some ick in this. So the church, just within the past couple of weeks, we're preparing to do Doctrine and Covenants for our Come Follow Me next year. They put up on the church website, it's not in the Come Follow Me curriculum, but it is on the church website in the section for kids, kind of an explanation of plural marriage, meant to teach kids about plural marriage with pictures. And
we should say these pictures are illustrations,
like cartoon pictures for kids, all about plural marriage. The title of this section on the website is Plural Marriage, Faith to Obey a Law from the Lord, Even When It's Hard. So they go through and they have pictures and they quote Doctrine and Covenants, and they just talk about Joseph and how he didn't want to do plural marriage, but the Lord asked him to, and Emma didn't want to, but the Lord asked him to, and you have to do hard things. And Emma and Joseph prayed about it, and Emma was approving of all of the wives. Anyway, it's
doctrinally, we got no beef with what they said.
Well, I mean, I personally, I might.
Okay, well, I got no beef with what they said.
It is the narrative we've always been given, so it's nothing new. It's the narrative we've always been given, which is that he didn't want to do it. The Lord asked him to. Emma didn't want to do it, but she was faithful. So it's not a new narrative. It's very strange to see it geared towards younger children.
Mhm.
I think because it is such an icky part of our past that is just really difficult for us. I think we've avoided it.
Mhm.
And like, it's the kind of thing that like, I don't think I really got into the weeds with it until I was a teenager
Yeah.
in seminary.
Yeah.
And it was kind of talked about and tried to be explained. Nobody's ever been great at explaining it.
Yeah.
But so it's strange to see it geared towards young children. That is strange. And I know probably some people will think I'm a heathen. I'm just going to fully admit it on here publicly. I probably shouldn't. That for me, this narrative just doesn't ring true for me anymore. But I can still love Joseph Smith.
Yeah.
I can still like, I'm holding both
Yeah.
things, and
Yeah.
I've come to a place where I can hold both things.
Yeah.
That like, maybe I don't believe this particular narrative anymore, but I can still believe that Joseph was a prophet and inspired in many other areas. So I don't know, but that's just my personal opinion. So it's just weird to see it geared towards small, like primary children.
Here were my thoughts. Okay. In primary, you learn the basics.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to put myself in the age of a kid that is 3 to 11. I've been a kid that was 3 to 11. I've had kids that were 3 to 11. They don't go deep. They don't have the brain capacity to really go deep. They don't have a conceptual or contextual understanding of polygamy and what polygamy is.
Right.
To me, that's something that more comes into question when you are a teenager. And I think it's great that the church is far more transparent about a lot of this stuff than they ever were when we were kids. But to me, that seems something that I can't really see primary kids really even having a desire or even really conceptually like, what are you talking about, sort of a thing.
It's
It
too
seems
over
more
their head. It's too
too
much.
yeah.
Too much. So yeah, I thought it was interesting, and I'm sure that this stems from us trying to be more open, right?
Exactly, which is good.
We've run into problems when we've tried to tuck this under the rug and ignore it. So I know that that's where it's probably coming from, but yeah, it's like too young. I'm like, no, I would never teach this lesson to my
Yeah.
kids. Sorry, no, not doing that.
Definitely a discussion you would have with your teenagers.
Yeah,
that seems more age appropriate for them and more able for them to conceptualize and understand versus little kid is just gonna go, what?
Yeah. I will say one last thing about polygamy, and I'm sure they posted it this week because of this, is Faith Matters Foundation. Do you follow them at all on Instagram?
No.
They're like an excellent resource for members of the church, active but maybe struggling with certain concepts, or they're just a very faithful, faith promoting, but also recognizing like there's some tough stuff. They posted some stuff this week about polygamy and kind of the wrestle with it, just some really good resources. So I will leave with that like, it's a good place to go if this is a sticky topic, which it is for a lot of people.
Agreed.
Myself included.
Completely agreed. So, all right. Well, we do have a few news stories left. We've got something that is about temple ready ordinances and also BYU's new basketball recruit. We will save that for the Patreon segment. So those of you who are Patreon members will get a few more stories from us that we were not able to get through in the regular segment. We are going to move on to Mormons behaving badly. Well, I teased earlier that I have no Mormons behaving badly. I do have an update. It is a Lori Vallow update. As many of you are aware, she is set for trial in March of 2025 in Arizona on charges of basically conspiracy to kill her ex-husband, as well as I can't remember if it's her brother-in-law or nephew, I think. Anyway, so she's down in Arizona awaiting trial. She basically fired her lawyers and told the judge she wants to represent herself. And she said, for the past 5 years, I've been incarcerated. I have taken upon myself to study the case law and criminal rules of procedure in the state of Idaho and Arizona, as well as federally. And she said she's participated in 3 different trials. So the judge said, well, I never advise anybody that it is a good idea to represent themselves, but it is also your constitutional
Mhm.
right. So I'm going to let you represent yourself and remind you that you will be held to the same rules as if you were a lawyer. He did keep her public defenders on staff, so to speak, so that
Mhm.
if she needs to consult with them, she can.
Okay.
But her trial is set to begin on March 31st, 2025. So we will
That
have
is so interesting.
more Lori Vallow updates
Okay.
in 90 days or so.
I cannot understand anybody wanting to represent
No.
themselves when there are public defenders available.
Yeah.
She just thinks she knows better.
She
Maybe
just-
she was frustrated with her last attorneys
I
and
think
she's like, I can do better.
I think she was really frustrated with her last attorneys.
Man.
There is an old saying that a lawyer who represents him or herself has a fool for a client. And I'm a lawyer and I'd never represent myself. So
Wow.
I don't know.
Wow. That's a decision.
Yeah, it's a decision. All right. Shall we wrap up the show with our favorite things?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
You go first, I'll go second.
My favorite thing I'm going to share this month is an app.
Oh.
It's an app to help you sort through your photos.
I need that.
It is called Slidebox.
Okay, let me write that down.
I've had this app for a couple years, and I don't think I've picked it as a favorite thing before because I don't think I was properly using it. And
Oh.
I had a discussion with a friend last week, and she told me how to properly use it. And I was like, no, I have not been taking full advantage of this app.
Okay.
So the app is Slidebox. You open it up, and it helps you sort all of your photos into files. So the way I had been using it the past few years is I had created a file for my company. I have a jewelry company.
Yes.
And I was using it to
just manually put your files in?
to push photos into that file so that I could easily find my business photos versus my family photos. Well, my friend was saying that she makes a file for everything, every vacation, every like kid's birthday, every like back to school file, like basically just a file for everything. Fall 2024 photos.
Oh, I love that.
And I'm like, oh, I have not been using this the right way
I love
because
that.
my business photos are all in one place, but it didn't occur to me to make separate files for every single family event. And then the other thing that I did not realize about this app until she pointed it out to me is when you go into Apple Photos on your phone, not through the Slidebox app, you sort them in the Slidebox app. But then when you go into Apple Photos on your phone, they are organized in the files via Apple Photos on your phone. So the app
I love that.
pushes them into files on your phone. So
I am going to have to do that because my photos are just a hot mess.
Yes. I think most people's are. Mine are too. So this is my hot tip. Slidebox, get the app, sort your photos. And this is what I will be doing on my upcoming road trip. Because that was her other hot tip was sort your photos when you're on an airplane or a road trip and you're just going to be sitting.
That is really smart because I every once in a while, if I'm stuck somewhere, I'll start, you know how you take like 10 photos and you really only need one? I'll start going through and deleting what I don't need.
Yeah.
So, okay. So my favorite thing is an orange. And I am going to hold it up to the camera for those of you who are watching us on YouTube. This is called a Cara orange.
I've had those oranges before. They're delicious.
I had never had a Cara orange until this last October. I bought the Caras because I knew they had a different color, and I was drying oranges for a Relief Society activity craft that we were doing. And I, generally speaking, am not a big fan of oranges. They're way too acidic for me. I don't really like them. I tried the Cara, and I was like, where have you been all my life? I would legit eat a Cara orange every day. So they are kind of like if a grapefruit, in my opinion, if a grapefruit and an orange had a baby, because they are much sweeter than a regular orange, and
they're pink inside.
They're pink inside, and they are just delightful. And oranges right now, 'tis the season for oranges. I bought a bag in October. It was at the end of the season. I could not get them anymore for the next, 10 weeks or so, and they are finally back in stock on grocery shelves because we have hit the citrus season. So that's my favorite thing.
Oh, I love it. I'm going to get some.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and close the show, unless, of course, you're a Patreon subscriber and you get to stay with us and hear our extra content. So if you have any questions or comments, you can reach out at contact@thisweekinmormons.com. We will open our mailbox and respond. You can find us on Facebook. I've been really bad. We have not updated our twin sisters
Yeah, we need to
Instagram
do
in a
that.
while. We need to do that.
We'll do that.
Work has been killing me, and
family's been killing me.
Dance momming has been killing you.
Dance momming has taken me over the edge. But we have some downtime.
Yes, maybe we can get that done.
I can work on that.
Okay,
Yes.
good. All right, so Twin Nation, thank you very much for joining us today. We hope that everybody has a very, very Merry Christmas and a New Year, and we appreciate you being part of our family.
Thanks for listening.